Hi and welcome to another YouTube video. This is a little tutorial on how to deal with difficult Sims roof situations that can come up based on the shape of your house. First of all, a few basic tips and tricks. This is a roof. You can make it longer and wider and change the angle with these arrows, and you can extend the overhang on the sides and on the bottom of the roof using these different looking arrows. If you press Shift while extending it, you can manipulate just one side and basically make it asymmetrical. With this little ball over here, you can change the curve of the roof. If you press Shift and C while having the roof selected, you get 3 separate curving points, which can be super useful. Now let's get into the first situation. If you have a tower of any size, but you want a nice high roof, but then you go and pull down the roof overhang, it can easily happen that it covers the entire story underneath, which sometimes can look cool for a witch hut, for example, but most of the time you don't really want that. And if you want a round roof on an octagonal tower, for example, there can be these like little bits of the wall sticking through the roof, and it's just not perfect. It's not how we want it, but it can be solved with the general rule of thumb, which is you always need more roof pieces than you think. Because if you keep that high roof piece without extending the bottom, and then you add a second roof piece, for example a round one, but you keep it at a flat angle and then extend it, all those problems I mentioned are solved. And that works with round and octagonal towers as well as with square ones, big ones, small ones. Just works all the time. Just a little tip. Problem number 2 is relevant if you work with at least 2 exterior wallpapers, because I've run into this situation quite often where I used a roof with these walls on both sides, and when I went to paint them, it either matched one side or the other because both of them had different exterior wallpapers, and that used to be a huge struggle for me. And I tried to figure out how to get the wallpapers to work in a way where it matches the roof on both sides and stuff, because I didn't realize that I can just split up the roof into 2 roof pieces in the middle with one wallpaper on its side and the other on the other side, and it's just like a non-existent problem. And it's very possible that it's quite obvious and that it was just a me problem, but I wanted to include it anyways if anyone else had the same problem as I did. Next up, if you have a front porch where one part of it extends further forward than the rest of it, and you cover it with like a roof, but then on the area where it extends further forward, you put a roof piece and you drag it like so that it covers the entire area, what often happens is that that piece that went out further forwards does not connect seamlessly with the rest of the roof anymore, but kind of sticks out over the top of it. In that case, you can just keep that roof piece in the same position as the rest of the roof and press Shift and just extend out the front of the roof until it covers the area it's supposed to cover. And if it goes down too much, you can lower the angle of the roof. That's going to push that extension forward, or you can push up the tip of the roof using the extended roof curving options. And you can also lower the columns in the front in case there is some like clashing going on there. If you have a porch that wraps around a corner, it's easy to just use one of those roof pieces that already has like these closed corners and is kind of like square or rectangular, and just call it done. And there's nothing wrong with that per se, but there can be visible stripes from the top of the roof, and the endings of the porch where it meets back up with the wall can also look kind of weird. And to avoid that, you can just use one of those roof pieces and keep it in kind of a square form, and then put it into the corner and just use a quarter of it until like that stripe that happens in these corners or quarters just like matches up perfectly between the porch corner and the wall corner. I hope I explained it okay, but you can also see it in like the visual footage. And then you use left and right from that. You use those roof pieces that are basically just like one angle, so like not this kind of roof, but this kind of roof, and you match up the angle of that with that corner piece. And then if you kind of slide it until they like are next to each other, it should blend into each other seamlessly. Now, one last porch one that is sort of 2 tips in one. So if you want this sort of roof in the front, but you don't like the way it looks with the wall being in front and going over the porch area, you can just push it back until it meets up with the actual wall where it just looks right, and then you can push out the front of the roof overhang until it covers the space over the porch, and it can look quite cool. And here, for example, I decorated it with some debug stuff, but it is kind of see-through, which is also a challenge while connecting it up to the rest of the porch roof in this case. So in this case, there was like this little hole forming but connected up, where if I would extend the one half of the other front porch roof piece over to the side, it would be visible because this is like kind of see-through without the walls. But if I pushed it back, there was like this little hole left. And if that something like that happened, then it can also happen in different areas of the roof. But if that happens, if there's like this little roof forming, or you have just like weird janky areas where 4 roof pieces meet up, this kind of areas, you can always cover them up with roof decorations. One nice thing you can basically always go to is a chimney, but in this case that wasn't possible because there was already a chimney pretty close nearby. So what I did in this case is I used some landscaping, just some plants, raised them up until they covered that area and also some other areas so that it does not look out of place. And that is a technique that you can do on roof. Like, you can place landscaping on roof, and you can not just use that to cover up weird areas, you can also just use that to give your build a more old or overgrown look. The next one is a roof for a Scandinavian home where there is a lot of the underside of the roof visible. So what I did is I used a dark thatched roof, and all of the thatched roof in The Sims are also colored and textured on the underside of them, which is super useful. But in this case, the thing that I actually wanted to talk about was that there were different colors in the front, like different parts of the front. So I used these roofs again that are just an angle into like one direction, and then blended them into the overall roof, just using a different wall color in the front, and that worked quite nicely, and I could do that in the front and in the back. Now for a classic roof problem. 2 roofs are crossing paths and the corner meets up with each other, and here you can simply make one of them stop earlier, then put a second roof piece into it that connects with the rest of the roof without having the overhang at the bottom, and voila, it's not completely not messing with the other space, but it's a lot better than before. Now let's surround an attic with a roof. First off, adjust the height of the roof pieces left and right of the attic, and the angle of them to match up with the wall height. Afterwards, we cover the top of the roof, which needs to extend out 2 times for this to work well with the roofs on the lower story. And they, of course, need to be extended 2 times on either side as well to match up. But when I did it like this, there was this weird messing with each other of like the extensions of both rooms, and so what I had to do was make the roofs on the left and right side 1 tile smaller, so leave a 1 tile gap on either side, and then the roof pieces matched up perfectly. But of course, I didn't want there to be a gap near the attic. I wanted them to like have some closed walls there. So I needed to put yet another wall piece in between that would just like be there to close the walls. And with this one, it just had like no overhang extensions stuff whatsoever. It was just like this small little roof piece that was just there for the walls. And there we go. We have surrounded the attic with the roof. And now last but not least, how does one put a roof on a half wall? For example, for a castle build or something where you just want more height variation. This one is pretty tricky and it needs to be done as the last step while creating a build, because every wall you draw on the inside and a bunch of other things you do while you're building are going to lead to this roof being deleted. So it's also not very suited for gameplay builds where you maybe want to adjust the build later, but sometimes we builders just want to get creative and get a specific look, and here's how you do it. So first of all, we need to create a floating room, and that's pretty similar to the process of building a bridge, because you build two rooms on top of each other and then deleting the lower one that was connected to the ground, and now you can adjust the height of the upper room just freely up and down until it matches up with the height of the half wall, or like the height where the half wall stops. Now you can put a roof on top of that floating room, deleting the room underneath, and now you have a floating roof on the right height. To move it, you'll have to adjust the size and sort of slither it across the sky until the roof arrives at its destination, and now you have a lovely roof on a half wall. I hope some of those tips were helpful and gave you some new ideas on how to execute those pretty Sims builds that are floating around in your head. I hope that you enjoyed and liked this video. If you would consider subscribing, it would make me super duper happy, and I hope you have a lovely day and we'll see each other again.